This evening, I have the pleasure to be joined by Mr. Tim Donegan of Trocchio Wines. How did I do? Trocchio?
It's perfect. Trocchio.
Perfecto.
Perfetto. See.
Down in
You're asking an Irishman how your Italian pronunciation is.
That's too good. That's too good. Thank you so much for joining me on this evening. You're down in Melbourne, Victoria?
Correct.
How you doing?
Good. It's a little bit chilly. It's I think we got to 0 today. So
Cool.
I see that you're rugged up with your scarf, but not so for us brave Victorians. No, it was pretty chilly. Frost on the ground this morning, but apart from that, doing well.
Okay. No, you guys do have the real cold down there. I can't say it's quite that cold up in Brisbane. I'm just looking a little bit of TLC here, looking after myself, trying to keep it snug as a bug on a rug. And this level of the house is a little chillier. So the jumper and the scarf and the vino should
well,
pretty well together.
Regardless of where you are, you should have the vino.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
A Nero d'Avola.
Okay.
Nero d'Avola. My wife will kill me for my pronunciation. Yeah. So not one of my own this evening. I had it open and I just thought I'd stick with that. So just finished dinner. Thought I'd bring the glass in with me.
How good. Okay. Yeah. Let's jump into it. So
Sure.
Trocchio Wines. A little bit about you. Italian, Irish.
No, so I'm 100% Irish. I've just married into the family, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, that's right. Your other half is Italian.
Absolutely. Yeah. My wife's family are from a little place called Lenola in Latina in Italy.
And I understand that has something to do with where you got the name Trocchio.
It is. Well, her surname is Di Trocchio. And in the dialect of that area, a Trocchio is a wine press. In a lot of other places in Italy, it's known as a Torchio, but this particular dialect, they call it a Trocchio. So having a name like Di Trocchio means that at some stage, I'm assuming the family would have been involved in wine. In the same way as somebody is named after their trade years ago, like Smith for blacksmith or carpenter or fisher or something like that. Yeah. So that's my guess as to where that comes from. But the wine press that I use was her dad's. I never got to meet him, so he died before I met my wife. But I still use that today. And he made that with a friend of his. There was, I think he was a fitter and turner, so he did the screw and so forth. So just an old basket press. And I've spruced it up a little bit because the wood tends to get a little bit ugly, not just in terms of aesthetics, but, I can harbor all sorts of nasties in there. So I just freshed it up with some new oak. But I just thought it'd be a really nice synergy or a link or sort of an homage to what he did and the family history.
That's terrific. So there is a bit of wine lineage there and like all authentic, organic, grassroots Italian wine.
Yeah, culture. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What about your side, Donegan's?
Absolutely none whatsoever. Apart from the famous Donegan winemaking dynasty from Dublin. No, I don't think there's at the time before I moved here, there was nobody doing any wine in Ireland, but things have changed in Ireland and in the UK. With I guess I don't know if there's any positive sides or any upside to global warming, but that's certainly one adaptation that they've been able to do in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you hear of a lot of Southern England, a lot of great sparkling. Noir, Meunier, Chardonnay, etc. But is that how far north does that extend?
I've heard of places in Wales, but normally it's the south of England. It tends to be a little bit warmer. The further north you get, the colder it gets. I'm talking about England. The further north you get, the colder it is and the wetter it gets. So you have all those disease pressures, not that they escape them in southern England. And Ireland, similar sort of situation as well. Mm-hmm. There's a few places growing grapes there, but again, they'd be, a lot of the Swiss or Austrian grape varieties, the ones that do better in colder climates.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So where did your fascination for wine come from? So you've obviously taken upon yourself to start a wine business, Trocchio Wines. You're passionate about the product, and we're going to get into that, flesh that out in a lot more detail.
Yeah.
When did that all start, considering you're from Ireland?
Yeah. Look, I think it would have been when I was growing up. It would have been sort of late 70s, early part of the, very early part of the 80s. But um, my mum had spent quite a bit of time in France. She was a fluent French speaker, and Dad was a bit of a Francophile as well. So um, not every day, but we would have wine with meals, maybe on the weekend, once or twice a month. So that was the initial exposure. And from there, just as a young teenager of legal drinking age, of course, checked out a few wine bars in Dublin as well. Not because of wine per se, but because they're pretty cool looking places. They were in cellars and it had a, really nice vibe about it. So that's when I started to first take notice. And I think I was mainly a white drinker at the time. I seem to have a fascination for Riesling. And then I left Dublin in 81 and went over to London and living there for a while. And of course, there's a lot more exposure to wine in London, a lot more wine drinkers, and they get wines from all over the world. And I was living, the girl that I was living with at the time, no partner, we used to do a weekly shop together. And we'd go into the supermarket and she'd take the trolley and say, right, I'll pick everything up. You choose the wine. And she'd do all that. She'll come back and she goes, have you decided? And I think, look, I've narrowed it down to 3, maybe 4 wines. So I'm still picking maybe one or 2 bottles, and we could only afford maybe 1 bottle at the time. So I had to make sure that it was the right choice, having to think about what we were going to eat during the weekend. You just, you're like a kid in a candy shop, just spoiled with so many different varieties and different countries of origin as well. Yeah, so that was pretty exciting. But yeah, throughout my days in London, I was one of the jobs I had was working for a corporate entertainment company, and I was doing mainly credit management and accounts side of things. But I somehow fell into operations side of things as well. And one of my jobs was looking after the bars and ordering the wines with a little bit of consultation. So the corporate entertainment industry, people would bring some of the most revered clients along to big sporting events. And we'd provide food and wine and all the catering for it. So that side of it was pretty interesting, and it was my first real exposure to good quality wines, and trying to have a good balance across that spectrum on offer for some of these people that were attending the events. So
when we're saying, can I just jump in there? When we're saying first exposure to good quality wines, do you remember anything you had back then that just wowed you and set you off on your journey?
Yeah, look, it was the first time I had a Gewürztraminer, and I was just blown away by the aromatics of it. I thought this is different to anything else I've had. But just the names of Sancerre, Saint-Emilion. In fact, Saint-Emilion was a wine that I remember from when I was back in Dublin. It was the first wine I think that I really stopped and took notice of. Can't remember who the maker was or what year it was, but I thought, no, this is there's something a bit more going on than just a drink that you have with your dinner. But yeah, look, Pouilly-Fumé and Chablis and Sancerre, the Sauv Blanc and the Chardonnay that we know now, but just getting exposed to some of those wines and great Burgundies and Bordeaux wines. Not many. It was a real sort of French influence on what they had, but the sparkling that they did, I think it may have even been from Brown Brothers, but they liked the idea of Australian sparkling wines at the time because it offered such good value.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was they were some of the wines that I remember in terms of brands. Yeah, look, can't recall, but I did have, and I wish I could find it now. I did have a little scrapbook where when I finished a bottle of wine, I'd soak it in water and just gently peel the label off and stick it in a book and write some notes about the wine, the name. So yeah, look,
before apps.
Before apps, exactly right.
And
yeah, it was that.
That's so much more creative, so much more authentic. What are we doing these days? Ugh.
Oh, look, and I guess that's where Instagram comes in, because a lot of people they don't take those notes, or they may not have an app. And if you've got a genuine fascination with wine, then you take your photograph, you post your tasting notes, and all of a sudden you've got a record.
Yeah.
Of what you had here.
Okay, we're going to talk about that a lot more actually throughout the course of this conversation. But I'm going into travel mode now.
Okay.
Travel vicariously through the guests I get on this show. So I'm just going to jump on this opportunity. You're born in Dublin.
Yes.
Tell me, what's it like growing up in Dublin?
It was good. It's a good childhood. I lived most of my life in Dublin, just on the outskirts. So there was before they built the equivalent of the big shopping centres, I used to have to cross a couple of paddocks to get to school. Summer holidays, we'd have 3 months summer holidays, which is a long time. And you hear these stories of, you grab something to eat in the morning. When the sun comes up, you're out with your friends and you come back, when it's dark. The rule was don't get into trouble and come back by dinner time. So it was, it was pretty good. Enjoyable lifestyle.
Okay. Yeah. Growing up, what were the sort of things? Were you a sporty guy, hobbies, interests before you took up your fascination with alcohol?
Yeah, sports, I think. Yeah, I think a lot of, despite the cold weather, there's a lot of outdoor sports. A lot of Irish people like getting out and about and doing things. So I played soccer. I played a little bit of Gaelic football. Hurling is another Gaelic game that they play there, mainly at school. But as I progressed through school, I got into rugby, and ended up playing quite a bit of rugby before and after school. After I left school as well. Yeah. So mainly sports, that sort of stuff. A little bit of fishing. It depends on age and stage. The older you get, you've got access to cars, and then you can get out and about and start doing things with friends. But there's a huge music scene in Ireland, and yeah, a country that are very, very proud of the culture, with art and plays and music and traditional Irish music, plus rock music as well. Yeah, so there's a great love of music, and I think that sort of brushes off on a lot of people that are growing up there. So combination between sports and music, and just doing what all teenagers do.
Yeah.
Before in the days before internet and social media and stuff like that. Yeah.
And it looks like such a beautiful country. I mean, I've never been to the UK, but it people describe it as cold and dreary and overcast. But at the same time, you see these pictures and these depictions of just emerald green cliffs, mountains, rivers. Am I overdoing it, or is it?
No, it's all there. And it's the same with Australia. Once you get outside the cities, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's a little bit flat in the Midlands, but round about the coastal areas, you got mountain regions. There's so much history. There's just ruined castles everywhere. You're sort of tripping up over them all the time. Yeah. Look, there's a lot of that, and clearly a lot of history there as well. Yeah. So it's a good place to travel, and a lot of similarities with the UK as well. But it's not as cold as, you do get your freezing mornings, but because of the Gulf Stream the Gulf of Mexico. You get all those warm winds coming through, so it's not as cold, but yeah, it cops its fair share of rain, and I guess you need that to ensure that it's all green. Yeah, not dissimilar to Tassie.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it has its weather challenges, but gee, it's a beautiful place. Just came back from Tassie about 6, 8 weeks ago. Yeah, stunning place.
Yeah.
Really, really
Absolutely.
nice.
And when did you make your way out here, and what was the catalyst?
Um, I came out on Christmas Day, '98, and arrived in Melbourne from the UK. I think it was about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I remember walking off the plane and this wave of heat just
Yeah.
it was quite astonishing. The reason I came over is because I was imported as a souvenir from my wife's European trip. I met my wife over in London. I was living on houseboats at the time, and she was a school friend of somebody that I'd met in Egypt, who was now or at the time was back living in London. Um, so yeah, look, we became friends for a while, and then she came back here, and we used to phone each other all the time. Again, before mobile phones and apps and that sort of stuff, it was literally one of those pick up the phone and
Bloody expensive
it was.
phone
And to
calls.
be honest, that was you asked about catalysts. That was one of the catalysts because we were going, gee, this is seriously costing a lot of money, and
Yeah.
I'm a good listener. I don't, in terms of bang for buck, I didn't get much talk again, but I was a good listener, and we were just trying to figure out how this would work.
Mm.
And we're looking at all these different options. Oh, we could do this or we could do that, and we were writing, or we could try and send emails or something like that. And one of the options was, she said, you could come over here, but you need a visa and that sort of stuff. And one of the options was, well, that's what we could get. If we're to get visas, you're too old for a working visa, so we'd have to get married or do something like that. And the more we talked about it, um, getting married was an option.
Just made sense.
It made sense, but I didn't realize it at the time. And I remember putting the phone down from that conversation, and one of the guys that I was living with, he goes, "Mate," he said, "I said, are you all right?" I said, I think I've just got engaged." So it was a super romantic.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, look, my wife came back over. We lived on a houseboat. So the deal was that we'd get married in Dublin. So we got married in Barberstown Castle, and then we'd continue living on the houseboat for a little bit, and then come over here. So yeah, Christmas Day '98.
Okay. What's it like
Mm.
being married into an Italian family?
It's
The wine heritage. You've already told us about the Trocchio, which we're going to talk about more. But I've
yeah,
got some Italian friends. They're all just some of the best people I know. What's it like being in the epicenter of it all?
fantastic. It's a bit of an assault on the senses. Um, I remember I first when I first met my wife's my mother-in-law, who's now passed away. She said, my wife said, "Oh, so what do you think? This is in Italian." And she went, "Oh, okay, ma, too skinny." And she spent the rest of her days trying to bulk me out. And Jay, if she could see if she could see me now, she's certainly succeeded. But look, there's a huge focus on family, and food and wine. There's a lot of cultures that like to feed you, but certainly the Italians, it's all about eating uh, and sharing family experiences. So, yeah, look, it's been fantastic, and those guys have been are really good to me, and I felt like they made it easy for me to fit in. So, yeah, look, it's a great experience,
Okay. And
and
have you been able to manipulate that relationship into affording you a lot of time to, travel the Italian countryside and get in the local wine scene over there?
yeah, a little bit, not as much as I'd like. Certainly, the first few visits over there was all about family. So my wife's got family in Latina, so place where the region where Lenola is, and Rome as well. So we used to spend a lot of time there, and we'd come back and I think, gee, I haven't seen this or I haven't seen that. She also had a cousin that was he was a university professor in Lecce, which is further south. But yeah, didn't really explore the wine scene that much. And it's only on the last few trips back where we've gone, you know what, let's keep it quiet from the family, but we'll arrive there maybe a week or so in advance, and we can do a little bit of exploring. So I think last time we went back in 2019, we went to where did we go? So we stayed in Milan, then we went to Florence, stayed in Venice, and then made our way down and yeah, to Rome. And then we've also done Pompeii and Napoli and places like that. So yeah, next time around, I'm looking to do Piedmonte and hanging to see Sicily.
Yeah.
I've really got into some of the wines in Sicily, so I'd love to explore that. And again, you know, we touched on social media, met a couple of people online, and yeah, you just set up relationships or create relationships with these people, and it'd be good to catch some of those when I'm over there as well. So there are certainly two areas that are on the radar for trip next year, I think.
Okay. What is it like, you know, somebody that you've immersed yourself into Australia's wine industry, which is, you know, very new world. And then you travel to a place like Italy, which is as old as civilization itself, as is the wine industry, you know, the Etruscans, ancient Rome, you know, the birthplace of civilization.
Yeah.
What's the vibe you get when you're visiting some of those historic places, the wine industry over there?
Yeah, you just gobsmacked by the history of it all and the fact that it goes back so far. But it's you're not comparing apples with apples. Yes, it's got that antiquity, but in terms of the age of some of the wines or the vines, because of phylloxera and other circumstances, Australia has some of the oldest vines in the world as
Ironic,
well.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it is, as you say. I mean, it's truly ironic, but what is still there is the history and the fact that the winemaking has gone back generations and generations in terms of modern winemaking, and then, as you say, the history. You know, taking over from the Greeks and the Romans doing their thing, and the influences of other countries. And when the Roman Empire was being built, they had an opportunity to go, oh, they're growing grapes as well. Oh, that's different. I haven't tried that before, I'm assuming, and they'll sort of bring it all back, and it becomes a bit of a melting pot. But yeah, look, just the history. We spent a bit of time in Montepulciano, the town, and again, some of the traditions. So they've got. I think it's maybe 6 or 8 families there, and every year they'll do the barrel race. So you get teams or banners or families or colors, and they'll do a barrel race of 2 people pushing a barrel up and down the hills in Montepulciano in Tuscany. Just yeah, it's beautiful. Haven't seen it, but I've seen the photos, and there are markers all over the town. I think I posted something at one stage of all the little the emblems of the families and the teams that they had doing the races. So yeah, things like that, and just seeing some of the cellars, and you know that it just goes back so long, and even the touristy things like wandering around Rome. They say, oh, and Pompeii is a classic example. Areas where they've made their wines or kept the wines, and there's still a vineyard in the middle of the ruins in Pompeii. So that sort of stuff just blows your mind. So it is a little bit different, and you get a great appreciation of that when you're over there. But I think the Australian wine industry has got a wealth of history of its own, and something that we should be equally proud of. Certainly not going back to the year dot, but yeah, stand up to any winemaking culture anywhere in the world, I think.
It's quite
Yeah,
rustic,
it's fantastic.
James Busby and Maurice O'Shea and stories
Yeah,
like that, and just the old convicts.
absolutely.
Great history. Not quite
Yeah,
as long, but some of those multi-generational wine families as well, across from the Hunter to the Barossa, and
yeah,
they've held on. They've turned the Australian wine industry into one that is a real, don't even want to say contestant, but a real force on the world stage.
absolutely. Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's flourishing at all levels, grassroots, smaller
yeah.
producers like yourself.
Mm,
It's just terrific
yeah.
where it's heading. Let's talk about you now. So,
Mm.
Trocchio Wines, what was the genesis of that idea?
Uh, how did it really start? You mentioned the Italian background. So coming here, the as all good Italian families do, they made their own wine, or some aspects of the family. Some members of the family did it, and I had an opportunity to get involved in some of that rustic winemaking, old rustic Italian style wines, and I really enjoyed it. And I was just fascinated by the way you could take some grapes and make a wine out of it and drink it, and they'll drink it over the course of a single year to avoid adding sulfites or any preservatives into it. Um, but yeah, look, I thought that was fascinating. There was a friend of my wife's, somebody who she'd worked with. Her partner was Romanian, and when he came over here from Romania, didn't have not long after they got together, he didn't have a set career. And her family, I think, were from Mildura or somewhere warm like that. They grew table grapes. So he was involved in helping out the family doing that. And then he decided to study. He went to Dookie and studied viticulture there. And he ended up managing a vineyard in Nagambie. And I remember we were visiting one time, and he had a few other friends come over, and there was a winemaker and another viticulturist, and they were just chatting about, you know, things that happened during the course of their working day. And I'm thinking, oh, this sounds like a fantastic lifestyle. I wouldn't mind having a piece of this. So I said, so what is it going to take for somebody to get into the wine industry? It just seems like a really, really nice lifestyle. And they went, there's a lot of study involved. The pay is rubbish. You really don't do it.
Don't do it.
Do not do it. So
Yeah.
I took that advice and I ignored it. And not long after I got back to Melbourne, I signed up for a course. I think it was Cert 4 course in viticulture and winemaking. And I did that at a local TAFE in Charles Sturt. So I started to go through that, and well, I was really, really enjoying it. And I thought I've got to get involved in the industry just to sort of double down on those experiences, because reading about it in a book it's all pretty academic. You need to get out, get your hands dirty, and start doing some of that. So managed to get a part-time gig with Wedgetail Estate in Cottons Bridge, so Northern Yarra Valley. And I was doing a mix of everything. So on a Sunday, I'd look after the cellar door. And then on a Monday, I was either in the vineyard or in the winery helping out. So that was great sort of experience to, supplement what I was studying through Holmes Glen TAFE. And one of the guys I was studying with, who now runs and operates, he owns Payne's Rise, which is another really, really great winery in Seville. So again, Yarra Valley. And for a lot of the assessments and assignments, I would go with him just to do bunch sampling and that sort of stuff. So I had another bit of exposure there. So all of this was while I was working for an advertising company in Melbourne, and I had to ask for time off. And look, my boss was was really, really good. I said I need to take a day off to do the job at Wedgetail Estate. I need to do this on a regular basis. I said, have you got any objections to doing that? He said, look, not a problem at all. You pursue your dream, and you do that, and we'll work our way around a 4-day week. And they said, if you find that it's not working out and you want to go down to 3 days a week, let us know, and we'll support you to do that. So, wow. That was quite incredible, and not many people get that. So it just it allowed me that sort of freedom of movement. And then it got to a stage with that particular company where they were relocating. They're going to a shared services model. So accounts and IT were being moved to Sydney, and there were a lot of redundancies. So I was one of the few people that was kept on. And then the boss at the time had a thought, and he just went, we've offered everybody else a redundancy, but we just assumed that you guys would want to stay, not have to look for another job. But look, if you want it, you take it. So there were 3 of us and we all took the package. So with that package, I said, I'll never get an opportunity like this again. So I was looking around for work on either in the Yarra Valley or Mornington Peninsula, and managed to land a gig with 10 minutes by tractor on the peninsula. So I was working as assistant vineyard manager, and I was the one that was driving that tractor, the 10 minutes between the different vineyards. So I did that, and look, it's you just get paid award wage. I had a young family, and there was, look, any number of reasons why we decided not to relocate out to the peninsula. So sometimes you just got to make these calls. But I was a little disappointed that I had to leave the industry. And my wife said, well, it doesn't have to be the end of it. You can continue making wine. You do a little bit at home anyway. And the wines that I was making, friends and family were going, well, look, you should sort of ramp up. This is really nice. Can we buy some, and that sort of stuff. So it sort of morphed into that. And the accountant said, look, you should set up a company because you're spending too much money on your hobby. But incrementally, year on year, I've built it up, and sort of tongue in cheek, I call it Australia's smallest winery because I just do it at home. So in answer to your question, that's how it came about, the Trocchio wine setup.
Okay. Yeah. And Australia's smallest winery. I heard Priscilla Hannacum ask you the exact same question, so I already know the answer to it, but I'm just going to ask the same question. When you say it's Australia's smallest winery, do we know?
No, we don't. We don't. I think Carlsberg they ran an ad campaign, and it said, probably the best lager in the world. So it's open for interpretation. So it's look, if somebody knows of a smaller commercial winery, then you can let me know. But look, I'll do.
What's the operation? Break it down.
So the operation, I'll buy a ton of grapes, 1 ton. Mm-hmm. Of grapes. So that's my crush, 1 ton. And it's normally split 50-50 red grapes and white grapes. So from that, I'll make, depending what I'm making that year, but anything up to about 900 bottles, 900 bottles a year. So within that volume, my range is, and it's all sort of experimental at the moment because I'm just doing. I'll test and adjust as I go along to find out what I can do, what works well, and that sort of exploratory stage. So from the white grapes, I'll sometimes split that between Chardonnay, and I'll make a Blanc de Blanc from that, and then I'll do a quantity of table wine from whatever white grapes I get that year. So that allows me to have a sparkling and a white. With the red, I will do obviously a table wine with that, but using the Sanier method, I'll bleed off some of the free run juice from the red and make a rosé from that, and that allows sort of greater skin to juice contrast or ratio in terms of making the red, because using the basket press, the extraction is not really high, so those extra skins will give you the extra bit of tannin that you're looking for from that. And then from the finished red wine, I'll usually make a fortified wine. So that fortified wine is called ratafia, and again, it's a recipe from my wife's hometown in Italy. So I've robbed a lot from the adopted family history. But look, that's delicious. It's made by soaking a certain type of cherry in the base wine, whatever red wine I have, and then you fortify it with grappa, and there's a few other stages that go into that. But it is delicious. I don't like pumping up my own tires, but if there's one thing that I'm super proud of, and it's not even my idea, I'm just proud of that particular outcome, or the product that's come out of that. It's delicious.
Okay. And what drives your varietal selection? Is it, market, what you can get your hands on, or are there certain things, types that you're passionate about that you try and
all of the above, I think. First of all, you've got to find out what's available to you, but driven a lot by experimentation to a degree, and then other grape varieties that I've got an interest in, that I'm sort of passionate about at the time, or I'm thinking, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. I think the aim ultimately is to, it's a broad church in terms of what I'm looking for in grape varieties, but I'd like to eventually sort of hone in on a couple of grape varieties that that work well, that I enjoy making, and that are popular as well. Because it's not just for my own personal consumption. It used to be, and to a degree it still is. I've got to enjoy making it. But the way things have grown, I need to make sure that I satisfy the people that are buying these wines, or make something that is either marketable or attractive to people that are going to buy the wines. So look, just trying to source wine in the first instance, and that's been pretty problematic over the last few years, particularly last season. I'd made a Pinot Noir from the Mornington Peninsula, and I'd used this guy before, and I was really looking forward to getting some more fruit, but because of wet season, poor fruit set, there was just, in fact, a lot of places in Victoria and even beyond, yields were drastically reduced, and circumstances where you could potentially buy grapes in small quantities. People were just keeping it for themselves, or if there wasn't that surplus, you wouldn't get a look in. So I had to look elsewhere, and ended up getting some grapes from South Australia for last year's GSM. So I
was recently lucky enough to get my hands on a bottle of yours.
Yes.
Loved it, really enjoyed it. Tell me about that. Tell me about that specific bottle that I drank.
So the bottle that you got, as I said, it was from South Australia. When you're at the behest of other growers and trying to source fruit elsewhere, you've got no control over what the fruit is like. So, you do your due diligence, and you try and find out how good it is. But when I got back, I found out that it was quite high Beaumay, and I ended up making a wine that was 15.1, 15.2, somewhere in between. And it's a bit of a big hitter. And if you read the back label, I'm all about minimal intervention and letting the fruit tell its own story. And whilst there are ways and means of reducing the alcohol in the wine, that's not a true reflection of the story that those grapes have to tell. where they were, they went through a, incredibly hot summer, and got to the stage that they were at. So the wine itself, I was looking for something that was a bit more fruit driven. I was also trying to get some Grenache from Heathcote, but again, that that deal fell through. So I was riding a bit of a Grenache wave at the time. Desperately wanted to make a Grenache, so I thought this is a compromise, but let's do a Rhone style blend, but have it a bit more fruit forward. So I've gone 60% Grenache, 30% Shiraz, and 10% Mourvedre. So that's the blend. Put it through malolactic fermentation, older oak barrel. I think it was probably about 3 years old, so not a huge oak influence, but look, really pleased with how it's come out. Yeah, and even though it is high alcohol, there's plenty of fruit in there. It's multi-layered. There's a lot of complexity in it.
Well, yeah, you and I were briefly talking about this the other night. Like I said, it's not an overpowering wine.
No, no.
It's quite. I thought when I tasted it, it was quite kind of delicate. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, look, I think there's a degree of finesse involved.
Yeah.
So, I used a little bit of whole bunch in there. I don't over extract. It's, as I said, it's fruit driven, but there was quite high acidity as well, which I was surprised with. So it's got that nice balance between plenty of fruit complexity, and when you've got a blend like that, you've got the spiciness of the Shiraz, and the multi-layered, or the bright sort of red and dark fruits from the Grenache, a little bit of structure from the Mourvedre as well. So it's got a mix of everything. So it really is quite a harmonious blend. Sometimes it takes a bit of time because all these elements are sort of, they're not melded in together, and it takes a little bit of time to integrate those components of the wine. But this worked out pretty well right from the outset.
Okay, so that's probably an opportune moment to ask you what are the challenges that a small operation like yourself faces, and what's the ideal, what's the goal you're hoping to achieve with Trocchio wines?
The goal, or the ideal end state, or state of nirvana in terms of winemaking, would be to have regular suppliers of a variety that I enjoy, or a couple of varieties that I enjoy making, that ideally would be biodynamic in terms of the fruit, and I would like to continue to work through that biodynamic practice in the winery as well. Look, if I was a few years younger, and I've contemplated this quite a number of times, but buying my own land and just farming it biodynamically. But it takes quite a bit of time, and being a small operation, and I want to keep it small. It's not my intent to grow bigger. There are plenty of people that are fighting in that marketplace to get more and more, secure more and more shelf space in bottle shops and whatever. I like being small. It gives you, it has its issues and faults, but it also gives you that freedom of movement as well. So some of the other challenges would be just economies of scale. Everything, capital expenditure, all that sort of stuff, you're amortizing that over very, very small production, and potentially production that is changing year on year depending on what you're doing. But yeah, approaching bigger suppliers and say, I'm looking for half a ton of red, they're just going, good luck.
On that point, do you ever find like the scale you're operating at, I guess, prejudices against your ability to access the raw material that you would want to be able to make your product?
Prejudice is probably too harsh a term. It disadvantages you to a degree, but it just means that you've got to work harder to find some of those growers that that you can deal with on a regular basis, and through that and through experience over a few years of there's a group of growers that I work with, East Hill Estate. Uh, there's a couple of places on the peninsula as well. They're just fantastic to deal with. They like what I'm doing. They're happy to support it. And look, I like the idea of the reduced sort of carbon footprint of getting things as close as I can to where I'm making the wine. So the ideal is Yarra Valley or Mornington Peninsula, because I'm in the fortunate position that I'm probably equidistant from both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's handy, and I don't have to cross any of the phylloxera exclusion zones as well, which is also helpful. But yeah, look, just things like buying quantity. If I want bottles, I either pay an exorbitant amount of money for a small quantity of bottles, or I start buying pallets, which is what I've started to do. And one of the funny things that you do to try and overcome or mitigate some of those issues is I'll use the same as part of my consideration for what red wine or what white wine I do. I think, okay, well, what sort of bottle am I going to put it in? You know, if I've done whites and reds that fit into a Burgundy style bottle, I'm not going to do a Riesling because it's just going to look out of place. And same with Bordeaux bottles. I've made some cabs in the past, but yeah, my go-to is usually the Burgundy style bottle.
A good looking bottle.
It's a good looking bottle, and the ones that I get are sort of antique Burgundy, they're called, and they're quite a deep punt and nice and solid. So yeah, look, the other one is I'll get palette of the claret style clear bottles as well. And for a while I was restricted to using corks because of the bottles that I could get hold of. And then I thought, I've got to, if I'm selling it to hospitality venues, I've got to have the screw cap, because there's not many people that have corkscrews in their kitchen cabinet anymore. It's becoming and I've got a collection of them, all corkscrews. I bought some antique corkscrews. It's just another little side thing that I have with the wine. But yeah, I had to invest in a capping machine, and it's pretty mandrolic. It's not as if you put it on a line. But yeah, look, I've been able to get the Stelvin closures. I've printed them. Some of the other drawbacks is minimum order quantities for labeling and stuff, because again, the quantities are dealing are so small, it just ramps up the cost of labels. And right. The artwork is still going to be the same, but again, if you're sort of amortizing that over the cost of a bottle of wine, it tends to be a higher cost.
Mm-hmm.
So all those little sort of things, there's no showstoppers, but it just makes it a little bit harder to do what you do.
Sure. Okay. And what's the ambit of your reach? Who do you sell your wines to?
My ideal avatar is living locally.
Yep.
And going to local wine bars, restaurants, sort of Melbourne based. So yeah, look, I've got the website, and I can send stuff through Australia Post across the country. But again, if you're trying to reduce that carbon footprint, it's helpful if you can either drop off a box of wine. So I'm lucky in that the community that we have is a lot of local small businesses that tend to support each other. So yeah, that side of it is good. And even the local community bank, bank manager buys my wines, and she says, "Oh, we're doing something for." I mean, I've gifted and donated quite a few cases to local charities and so forth. But if there's an opportunity and the bank have the budget for it, they said, "Oh, want a couple of bottles, a couple of boxes for this particular event. We want to give them away as door prizes." So that sort of support is really fantastic. So that's what I'd like to stick with. I do have it in the city as well. For example, Chivico 23 is really, really great wine bar in the city, and they're stocking my wines as well. But yeah, the rest is sort of local hospitality, which is where I'm looking to stay.
Okay. Live in an age of technology.
Mm.
And that's where I met you. And that's so interesting because I'm up in Brisbane. I've had a bottle of your wine. But for me connecting with you on socials, having a few conversations, we're now having this conversation, I never would have had the opportunity to have a bottle of your fabulous wine. You're pretty active and you've got a bit of an online personality, very entertaining. I think that was the first thing I noticed. I thought, gee, who's this guy? He's got a great presence. He's obviously a winemaker. He's a little bit funny. What's going on here? In terms of the impact that has on the way you do your business, etc. What's your goal through utilizing social media? What impact do you think it has on the wine industry at large, etc. moving forward?
Yeah, look, interesting question, and there's a few there, so I'll try and unpack it.
I tend to do that to people. Sorry, I overload them, and then I just sit back and watch them
scramble. Yeah. Look, I got involved in social media probably at the start of 2020. I avoided Facebook even with family and stuff, and it was only because it was getting so hard to keep in contact with people, friends and family from overseas. I jumped on the Facebook bandwagon, but I said, I cannot understand people that just spend so much time on social media. It's like the world is outside. The world is not on your phone or on your computer. Then you start to launch a small little business, and you try and get a bit of exposure. But look, I had a situation start of 2020 when I was convalescing at a pretty serious op. So I was out of action for a while, and I ended up just scratching beneath the surface, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole of social media and particularly Instagram. And I discovered that there is a huge community of hugely passionate, wine passionate people out there that just love talking about wine. So I was actively engaging in those conversations, and going back to the whole thing about a small business and how do you optimize some of these little opportunities that you have. It's to capitalize on what is essentially free marketing. So if you can reach your ideal demographic or your ideal avatar, then if you know what sort of stuff they're interested in, if you know where they are, then you can push out content relating to them. So that was part of it. But at the same time, there are just so many people that spend so much time and effort just taking a photograph of a bottle of wine, and the detail that they've got about their tasting notes is fantastic. But if you're having the same thing over and over and over again, all of a sudden it's you become desensitized. So I thought I've got to mix it up a bit. One of the people that I'd made contact with on social media was a girl called Chloe Cristallini. She does social media marketing, but she niches it down to the wine industry. So if there's anybody out there looking for some guidance, she's a classic. So I learned a hell of a lot, learned a hell of a lot from her, and just ideas that she provided, and then jumping on doing the reels and stuff like that. And she started off with stories. So she did I think it was a 10-day story challenge, or Might even have been longer. But I was thinking, oh, you're kidding me. My mother, God rest her, would say, I've got a great face for radio. And that sort of held me back a little bit. And I thought, I don't have the confidence to get out there in front of people. And so I started doing these stories. And there was little guidelines: do this, do that, put in a question, try and engage, and respond to some of the answers in the questions that you put into stories, or try and be a little bit of humor, introduce a little bit of humor, or trying to put some facts out there and that sort of stuff. So it grew along with those stories, and even now I'm still not comfortable doing it. So situations like this,
I very much enjoy them. There
you
you
do.
go.
They are good. Hey, look, I've progressed since then, and over a period of time, you think, oh, actually, there's some of the responses are pretty good, and it encourages you to continue on and just sort of face your fears and just put yourself out there. And I think the more genuine you are, the more people can relate to you. And she was one that always said, make your mistakes, show your vulnerabilities on stories or something. Everybody can relate to that. There's nobody perfect that will pick up their phone, look into it, and then talk for 10 minutes without stumbling or stuttering or making a mistake or going, oh, hold on a second, I didn't want to say that. So there's a lot of that going on. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. So I've started this thing doing Tim's top tips on a Tuesday. And I do that every Tuesday now. And I try to, because it takes a little bit of time. And, when I've got a full-time job, it's pretty hard to weave all this sort of stuff in. But I try to pull out of it around about last year, and people are going, no, don't. Continue doing it. So I think, oh, gee, what am I going to come up with? Some of it is rubbish. Not rubbish, but it's, food and wine pairings, different wines, different venues that I go to. So anything that's wine related during the week, I think, oh, that might be of interest to people. So yeah, look, that's what I do. But just the whole social media thing has been a boon for me. It's really opened my eyes as to how much you can learn through other people on social media, and how many people there are like you that are just truly passionate. And if they're anything like me, a lot of my friends go, oh no, look, whatever you do, don't get stuck in a corner talking to Tim. He'll just chew your ear off about wine for, it's like before they go to any sort of social engagement, they'll have a safe word that they can say and say, oh, sorry, my partner's just calling me, or something to get away. But all of a sudden there was an environment where there was a lot of people happy to geek out over wine. And so much so that at one stage I thought there are so many people that are based in Melbourne that are doing the same as me. They're either doing WSET courses, or they're doing wine education, or they're doing whatever. And we're talking on social media.
Yeah.
Why not meet up and just share a glass of wine and, yeah, just sort of exchange ideas, challenges. It's like maybe support group is is too strong for wine content addicts. But yeah, we tried that, and we tried it in a restaurant, and I think we had, first time around, it was 10 or 12 people, something like that. And one of the first things we did when we all met up, I said, right, we've all come here, and very few of us have actually met in person before. So let's just go around the table and find out, what's your story? How did you get into wine? How did you end up on social media? What's the story behind the, your Instagram handle or TikTok or whatever it is? But it was mainly Instagram followers that I targeted for that. So yeah, that was the start of the Melbourne Wine Collective. And yeah, we've stayed in contact. We've had a couple of events, and it was one of those nights where just everything gelled
Yeah.
and everybody got on so well with each other. It was we're thinking to ourselves, why have we not done something like this before? So I've tried to do it in a couple of other places. I've had to travel for work up with a couple of people in WA, Priscilla in Adelaide. I've done it in Sydney and in Brisbane as well. So I think next time we're up in Brisbane, if we get the crew together, you'll have to come along.
Give me a ring, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just such a terrific thing is that the diversity of people you were just referring
Yeah.
to is that you can collect. I mean, and that comprise the wine industry. I mean, first off the rung, I mean, winery owners, winemakers, but they're, wine bloggers, wine
Yeah.
people that just are so passionate about it that they want to share it all over social media, wine journalists, all these different people that take wine from, back end all the way through to front of house and beyond. And they're all necessary to give the wine industry meaning. It's not just making it, you got to consume it, you got to appreciate it for it to be of any value. Lots of people involved in that process.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And there was one stage where, look, I've done a couple of interviews, or I've been approached by people saying, "We like your story." I sometimes feel like a little bit of an imposter. They talk about imposter syndrome, and I'm thinking, well, hold on a second. It's not just the big wineries and the big wine families and big companies that are involved in this. That everybody that has an interest in wine and has some input, or rather some output, puts content out there. They're all involved in the wine industry. So that was the great thing about the group. And a lot of people have, it's not the main gig. It's they do it as a side hustle, like me. I've got a full-time job, but I do this as I'm a weekend wine warrior. So I just make it and try and get out into vineyards as much as I can. Get the second hours on the morning to Peninsula. I don't know, before we went away, probably about 5 weeks ago. So good to get out among the vines again. But it's trying to find those opportunities, and you touched on earlier on the social media aspect. It takes a lot of time. It takes a hell of a lot of time. And one of the things that I picked up from Chloe was that don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if something falls over, say for example, Instagram falls over, everything that you've done is lost. So you'll find me putting a little bit of stupid stuff on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. I haven't done Pinterest, LinkedIn. So all these different social platforms that you can have some of your content out there. But yeah, look, I like to mix it up, a bit of everything, bit of insights into what I'm doing as a winemaker. And even that term sits a little uncomfortably with me. I would consider myself a wine lover first and a winemaker second. And just as a hobby, because I'm still a part of an amateur winemaking guild, and there's another group that are actively part of the wine industry. There's a lot of people make wine at home, whether it's country wine or proper wine, and they've got shows on every year, and it's all about learning from your peers, the other people within the guild. They'll invite winemakers in. They'll have talks on various other bits and pieces related to wine, but the competitions that they do. So the one that I'm involved in is the Frankston Amateur Winemakers Guild, and there's another one in Eltham. Now, the show that Eltham put on is, I think, the largest amateur wine show in the Southern Hemisphere, and they get some really really good judges in. So it's not local amateur winemaker, or you haven't got the Acacia Avenue wine show where you're awarded a best in show and gold medal because it's only you and the guy that next door that's making the wine. So these are there's a lot of entries go in there, all sorts of categories, but the quality of the judging there is pretty high. They're all sort of industry, some masters of wine, all industry players that are involved in that. So, yeah, there's many sort of all roads lead to Rome, so to speak, as far as the wine industry is concerned, and that's what makes it, so enjoyable. It's not sort of, linear. It's quite a broad church.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, closing questions. The peak, the height of your winemaking career to date. I'm sure there are still many more things you're going to achieve, especially given as your project comes to fruition, you grow it in the way that you're planning to. But at this point in time, has there been a moment where you made the decision to throw your hat in the wine ring, you've jumped in, you've got your hands dirty, a moment where you've gone, this has been worth it, I'm doing the right thing, I'm loving this?
Yeah. You could argue and say every time you go out into the shed and start playing around with it, you just go, wow, how cool is this?
Good luck.
It is a good life like that. I don't know if there's a single answer for that. I think my can't even remember what date it was. I think it might have been 2016 Sangiovese from Heathcote that won Best in Show, gold medal as well. And I think it was the first time that I'd got the proper labels done and got my printed screw caps. And I thought, gee, this is pretty grown up. This is looking good. And I think, and people are loving it. So yeah, that was that really encouraged me. That event that I just spoke about, getting the Melbourne Wine Collective together. I'm thinking, this feels comfortable. I like the people, and that's one of the great things about the wine industry. They're not closed off. They love talking. They love helping each other, and yeah, I like that. And then the spin-off from that is maybe using it as to travel. So anytime I travel, I went to Tokyo. I went to a winery, a wine region, just outside of Tokyo. Just jumped on the train, went out there, went and saw Grace Wines, a couple of other places. I've been to wineries in where to go? Israel, New Zealand. It gives you. It doesn't give you a reason to travel. You've always got a reason to travel, but it gives you a focus on something to do while you go over there and just see how other people are doing it in different countries. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Best wine you've ever had?
Yeah, I thought you might ask me this. I'm a shocker. I've had heaps of good wines, but I've got the memory of a starfish, and that's probably half the memory of a goldfish. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the one the outset that I mentioned. So that Sant'Emilio, and that I had way back when in Dublin. Yeah, that was the wine that I think, well, no, there's something more going on here. There's probably not consciously, but I went, yeah, I need to find out more about this. So yeah, look, I'll if I was to pick one, I'll put it down to the Sant'Emilio.
Okay. Now, you being a winemaker, small scale project, obviously frustrations there given the resources you have and what you can get with those resources. So let's put the resources aside and let's say you've got an unlimited purse with unlimited possibility. Where would you go? What would you make? Where would you be?
Where would I go within Australia or
anywhere?
Anywhere
In the world, where would you go and what would you be doing?
Yeah.
Can't say Australia. It's permitted.
Okay. Let's stay here because I put a lot of time and effort into it. But yeah, look, biodynamically grown Nebbiolo, yeah, in Victoria, maybe King Valley.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, or the peninsula. Let's stick with the peninsula because I love it. We've got a small little cabin down there as well. So yeah, that's there aren't many places in the world that are nicer than the peninsula. Yeah, sure, the allure of traveling overseas and or living in France or Italy or something like that would
Yeah.
be yeah, very appealing. But yeah, why not when we've got
Why leave?
such great resources locally.
And I love the fact that you said that, because we were, talking, I think very briefly at the start of this conversation,
Mm,
old world, new world, Australia being a very new world wine country. But that being said, it has its own expression
mm,
of even the old world varietals, Cabernet, Pinot, and I guess by way of example, I was with a friend, would have been last week, and enjoying just some fabulous wine, some Premier Cru Burgundy. And I snuck in a bottle of Australian Pinot Noir, Victorian,
mm. Yeah,
um, that was a fraction of the price, just
yeah, yeah,
a fraction
absolutely.
of the price. And it was, to my mind, just as good. Nobody
Yeah,
noticed. And it was a brilliant wine. Not the cheapest, but when you're comparing it with
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. To Grand Cru Burgundy. Yeah,
top burgundies, it was just so good. And I thought
yeah.
that's Australian, just forget it. Like that was a great wine, and that's hilarious, just based on price comparison and
And and
everything.
that's all down to the people who have really researched the type of soils, the climate, topography, terroir, for excuse me, want of a better expression. That's all down to them. And it was curious that I went to Best of Great Western in Victoria, and they've got wines from 1860s. But what I found fascinating was I think it's called the nursery block, and they have one for white and they have it for red. So they've got something like 26. I'm sure I've got that figure wrong, but it's a large quantity of grapes that were originally brought over, first cuttings, and they were planted as experiments, and they now put them into a field blend because the vines are so old and the yield is so low as well that they mix it around. But there are some varieties that have not even been identified through CSIRO and places like that. It's just mind-boggling. Um, and even the facilities there at Best Great Western, fantastic. But you got to take your hat off to the people, the pioneers of the Australian wine industry for putting all that time and effort into it. And we were just sort of riding on their coattails and looking for greater innovations. But again, done properly, stand up to some of the best wines in the world. And it's all about the expression of the grape and its reflection of where it's grown. Yeah, it doesn't have to be benchmark wines from Burgundy, Bordeaux, Piedmont. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Final question.
So, mm,
Final question. Advice you'd give to a young person or a person just trying to, immerse themselves quickly or slowly into the wine industry. They want to take it for all it's worth. What would
yeah,
you tell them to do?
just follow the passion, follow the dreams. But what I would say is travel. If you're young enough, there are, it just touched on the number of places that grow grapes, and I was quite surprised by the diversity of countries that will go grow grapes for wine. Get out there, start exploring, see how they do it over there, and mate, if yeah, if I was a 19-year-old, I'd be out there. I'd be seizing every opportunity. I'd be following the sun. I'd be following vintages all around. Yeah, do your study, but get the experience in, and yeah, it'll make you a better winemaker when you just drawing all that together. Yeah,
Awesome.
travel, enjoy it, make the most of it. It's a sensational life.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen. Tim
uh,
Donegan, thank you so much for your time. It's been an awesome conversation. It's been so good getting to know you recently. It was wonderful drinking a bottle of your wonderful wine. I've loved the conversation. Look forward to many more in the future, especially when you get back up this way for the next meeting of the Brisbane Wine Collective. I look forward to having a seat at that table
we'll do it.
at your right hand. Thank you so much for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Thanks again, Tom.
Likewise.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.